Imagine needing a replacement part for, say, a unique antique, or maybe wanting to bring a really complex design to life. Not in weeks, but maybe in just a few hours, right there on your desktop. Now, for those of us following tech, it's clear this isn't just science fiction anymore, is it? It's a very real, sort of tangible revolution that's fundamentally reshaping how we think about manufacturing, creation, even repair. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the world of 3D printing. We're going to look at the core ideas, trace its, well, surprisingly long journey, actually, and really dig into the huge changes this tech is driving. We're drawing heavily today from a great piece. What is 3D printing and how is it changing the world? Printara 3D. Now, 3D printing often feels really new, doesn't it? But its roots, they go back further than you might think. Way back to the 1980s, actually. That's when an American engineer, Chuck Hull, patented stereolithography SLA, they call it back in 1986. And this early method used a UV laser to cure liquid resin, building objects very carefully, layer by painstaking layer.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you think about how far we've come since then. Tuck Hull's first SLA machines, I mean, you can imagine. They were incredibly slow, super expensive too, and you needed really specialized people to run them. They were definitely stuck in high-end industrial labs, pushing boundaries, but not really practical for everyday use. But if you look at how technology tends to evolve, what we see now is almost the complete opposite. Today's 3D printers, they're not just way faster and more accurate, they've also become incredibly affordable and often so simple to use that, well, even total beginners can get started with them pretty effectively. And this huge shift is sort of democratization of the tech, moving it from a niche tool to something on your workbench. That has just opened the floodgates for this massive wave of innovation and creativity. We're really only just starting to see the full impact, I think. It's not just about making complex stuff anymore. It's about making it accessible for everyone.
That's such a key point, the democratization aspect.
Yeah.
How has that accessibility really changed things for, say, independent inventors or small businesses, people who just couldn't touch this kind of capability before?
Dramatically. It levels the playing
It
field.
really brings it right to our fingertips, yeah. And okay, so for anyone looking at this tech, maybe they have a printer, they're thinking about it. The basic question comes up, what exactly is 3D printing? Like at its absolute core, how do we boil that down? Well, basically, it's a process where a physical three-dimensional object gets created very precisely from a digital blueprint. A 3D computer model, taking something virtual and making it real, tangible.
Exactly. And the defining part, the real sort of magic, is how it gets made. Unlike the old ways, it's all about adding material progressively, layer by incredibly thin layer, building the object up from, well, from nothing, really. Which is why the more technical term you hear, and it's probably more accurate, is additive manufacturing. It's not just a fancy name, it perfectly describes the basic idea. You are literally adding material to build the final thing, bit by bit. And this fundamental approach, that's what unlocks so many of its unique advantages.
Right. And to really get why that's such a shift, we need to understand the other side of the coin, don't we? How things were traditionally made. It's a totally different way of thinking.
Completely different philosophy.
So if additive is about building up, what's the traditional method most of us know? How does that really differ?
Okay, so when we talk additive manufacturing, like the name says, it's about adding material. You could think of it like building a brick wall, maybe, one brick at a time, placing each piece carefully. A 3D printer does something similar, just on a micro scale.
Yeah.
It puts down these super thin layers of material, could be melted plastic, maybe cured resin, or even powder that's fused together, sintered, they call it.
Sintered, yeah.
And it just gradually builds the thing up from the base. And a huge, maybe underrated benefit here is how efficient it is with material. There's minimal waste, sometimes none at all, because it only uses the material needed for the actual object, plus maybe some temporary supports, which has massive implications, for cost, sustainability, what materials you can even use. And then, in total contrast, you have subtractive manufacturing. It's the exact opposite approach. Here, you start with a solid chunk of raw material, could be metal, wood, plastic, whatever, and you get the shape you want by removing the excess material, cutting it away. Classic examples, like a sculptor carving a statue from a big block of marble. That's subtractive.
Right. Taking away what you don't want.
Or, more industrially, think about a CNC machine, computer numerical control. These precisely mills a metal part by cutting away everything that isn't the final piece. Now, subtractive methods are incredibly precise, often great for mass-producing simpler parts, no doubt. But the built-in drawback is that you generate a significant amount of waste, all those scraps and shavings. You're essentially throwing away everything that isn't the product, which can be costly and, not great for the environment either. But what's really interesting now is that while we talk about them as opposites, additive versus subtractive, the most advanced manufacturing today doesn't really see it as an either situation anymore.
Huh?
It's much more about a smart how and when strategy, using the strengths of both. Modern manufacturing is really moving towards the synergy between them. Think about it. Even a basic 3D print often needs some finishing work afterwards, right? Like sanding or maybe filling to get a smooth surface.
Yeah, true.
And what's sanding or filing? That's subtractive. You're carefully removing a tiny bit of material to refine it. And then at the really high end, industrially speaking, we're seeing these cutting-edge hybrid machines. They actually combine 3D printing and CNC machining in one unit.
Wow, okay.
So a part might be additively built first to get these incredibly complex internal features, maybe cooling channels you could never carve out. And then the critical outer surfaces are precisely machined using subtractive methods to hit exact tolerances, get that mirror finish. Things 3D printing alone might struggle with.
So they work together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This partnership, that's really where the future of making complex, high-performance stuff is headed. These two approaches that seem opposite, they're actually becoming really powerful partners, creating things that just weren't possible before.
That partnership idea really highlights how important this is becoming. From where you sit, what are the biggest, maybe most revolutionary advantages that additive brings, especially for industries really pushing the limits?
Well, one of the absolute biggest, as you kind of hinted at, is what we call geometric freedom. Because you're building layer by tiny layer, you're not limited by, having to get a cutting tool into a solid block.
Right, no tool access constraint.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So this lets you create shapes, internal structures that would just be physically impossible or way too expensive for subtractive methods. We're talking complex internal lattices like mesh structures inside a part that make it drastically lighter but still strong. Perfect for aerospace, or intricate hollow structures to save material and weight. Think about medical implants perfectly shaped to a patient's own anatomy, or internal cooling channels inside an engine part that boost efficiency in ways you couldn't achieve before. It's not just about making cool-looking shapes. It opens up totally new ways to think about function and weight reduction. Across so many fields, it really redefines what's possible in design.
And flowing from that geometric freedom, it sounds like another huge win is how it changes assembly, right? Fewer parts.
Precisely. Yeah. Another massive advantage is part consolidation. Just think. An assembly that used to be maybe dozens of separate bits, screws, bolts, joints, little brackets, all that stuff, can now often be designed and printed as one single solid piece, a monolithic part.
One piece instead of dozens.
Exactly. And that's not just about making things look neater or simpler. It drastically simplifies your whole supply chain. Less inventory to manage. It cuts down massively on assembly labor costs, and maybe even more importantly, it often results in a stronger, lighter, and more reliable component overall. Why? Because you've eliminated all those potential failure points where parts join together.
Fewer joints, fewer weak spots. Makes sense.
This is huge for industries like, say, robotics or advanced electronics or defense. Anywhere that reducing potential failures and making things smaller or integrating functions is critical. It allows for a level of system integration that was just, well, practically impossible before.
And I think for many people, especially maybe in product development or engineering, the most immediate impact they feel is probably the speed and low cost for prototyping.
Oh, absolutely game-changing there.
Because traditionally, making a prototype was a big deal, wasn't it?
Huge deal. You needed expensive molds made, maybe complex machine setups that took days, even weeks to configure.
And cost a fortune.
Right. Hundreds of thousands sometimes. With 3D printing, that whole timeline just shrinks dramatically.
You can literally go from a design on your computer to holding a physical model in your hands in, what, a matter of hours sometimes, not weeks?
Exactly, hours. Which means designers, engineers, they can quickly test their ideas, iterate, make changes on the fly.
Try things out quickly.
Yeah, try things out, see what works, what doesn't. It dramatically shortens that whole development cycle.
And, critically, cuts the costs way down for those early stages.
Which means, faster time to market for new products, designs that are actually more robust because they've been tested more thoroughly, and the ability to customize and personalize products much more easily than ever before.
What an incredible journey we've covered today, really. We started with that almost sci-fi idea of printing objects whenever you need them, and quickly went back to the history, finding the roots of 3D printing with Chuck Hull and stereolithography way back in the 80s.
Seems like ages ago now, doesn't it?
It does. Then we unpacked the core idea additive manufacturing, this revolutionary concept of building layer by layer. And we contrasted that with the traditional subtractive methods, the carving away.
The old school way.
Yeah. And finally, we dug into these transformative advantages, that amazing geometric freedom, letting designers run wild, the elegance and efficiency you get from part consolidation, and that game-changing speed and low cost for prototyping that's just accelerating innovation everywhere.
Yeah, this deep dive really does underline the fundamental shift in how we approach making things, doesn't it?
Okay.
We've looked at the what and the why of 3D printing, what it is, and why these advantages matter so much. But it naturally brings up the next question, right?
Yeah.
How exactly do these printers actually do it? How do they turn those digital designs into physical things? What are the actual specific technologies making this happen? You know, from the really popular FDM fused deposition modeling that uses the plastic filament.
The kind many people have at home now.
Exactly. To the ultra-precise SLA, building on Hull's original idea with liquid resin and light. The tech is just evolving so fast. And as 3D printing keeps weaving itself into more and more parts of our world, medicine, construction, even everyday stuff in our homes, just think about the future implications. What new uses might you run into? Or maybe even dream up yourself as this technology gets even more powerful, even more accessible, and just becomes part of the fabric of daily life.